when you're getting too ahead of yourself and you're at training, you literally need to focus on this one rep and this one drill.
I think talent can get you only so far, but on the day by day to check those boxes of making sure that you're doing everything right is very hard to balance, but gets you where you want to be.
Having each other's backs outside of the sport makes the sport a lot better.
You have to have everyone facing the same direction with the same principles, with the same mentality to be successful.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Good People, episode 15. Today, I was joined by Darin Douglas. He is the graduate assistant men's soccer coach at Earlham College in Richmond, Indiana. He's also my best friend in the whole wide world. Today, we talked about the differences between developing individuals and organizations, how to create buy-in from people in those organizations, and we also talked about some strategies for how to develop yourself as a coach. If you guys are watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on notifications so that you never miss an episode. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for taking part in this immersive listening experience. A meaningful existence is a moving target that, no matter how close, will always be out of reach. We hope this message finds you with an outstretched hand. As we attempt to uncover complex truths, remember, life's toughest questions can be answered if we all just focus on one thing: being good people.
Welcome to the show, man.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I wanted to jump right in is because this is a conversation. I've known you since I was 6 years old. We're just two buds having a chat.
That's right. I'm excited to do it.
Cool. How you doing, man?
Good. We're busy. Season's coming up about 4 weeks now. So getting things tidied up and, took some time off in the summer, which is always good. So yeah, we're good.
Very good. I haven't seen you. I don't know the last time I saw you in real life.
Man, I'm trying to think too. I mean, it's probably been right before I left to come out here, so.
Yeah. And then even before that, it was like once a year sort of deal.
It was. We're busy. We're doing things.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll get back to it eventually, but give me a 30,000 foot view of what you've been doing, what you're interested in, what's been going on.
Yeah. So my official title is graduate assistant men's soccer coach. I'm getting my master's degree in education through Earlham College. And what that looks like, for those of you that don't know, I'm an assistant coach for the men's soccer program, and I get paid through having my education and some other benefits paid for. I want to get into coaching. Coaching is something that I wanted to do for a very long time. This was a route that I know a lot of coaches have gone through, and it felt like a good opportunity for me for the next steps in my career.
You and I have talked about coaching since we were 15, bro. Like, it's cool that we're both doing that. What is it about coaching that's always drawn to you? I understand, like, it's a family business for you almost, but is that what it is, or is there another reason why you wanted to do it?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I've been around coaches my entire life. My grandfather, football coach for many years. My dad, coached in college, took some steps, coached us through youth sports, and obviously now he's still around in the game. His friends and even some of his players have had a big influence on me, and I knew that I always wanted to be around in sports. And I think a lot of coaches coach because they can't play anymore. They still want to be involved. They still want to have their hands involved with moving pieces along the way. So that's really why I wanted to get into it. I don't think there's many things that match the comparison of a game day, getting up for that, getting ready for that. So that's why I want to be around it as long as possible.
Yeah, something you said there was cool. It's, when you can't play anymore, you coach, right? And it's just being around the game, being around the environment, having the game day feeling. I was thinking about this in the shower before I came over to talk to you, man. I was thinking about my last soccer game I ever played. Do you remember yours?
Yeah, I do. Not too long ago, I guess, I should add, played college soccer at Ferrum College, and it was 2 falls ago now. We didn't make the tournament, unfortunately, but that was the last game. It was a night game. It's pretty surreal in a lot of ways. So,
yeah, I remember mine. You remember mine too.
I do. I do.
What was it? A conference championship?
I think it was the first round.
Okay. Either way, it was like we had to win or our
Yes.
season was done.
Yes.
Whatever it was.
Yes.
Dude, and just for anybody listening, my whole soccer career was I was the relief guy that played 5 minutes a half. You and I played the same position. You played over me for the majority of the time that I played soccer. I had a couple years at a different club that I played at and played a lot of games, but I was the stereotypical out of shape bench warmer, which I'm not afraid to say. I feel like I embrace that about me at this point. But dude, I remember going on the last 5 minutes of that game. I didn't play the first half. I checked in for a throw in. I opened up a bunch of space. Nobody was there. So I turned around and I took the space. I was running away from the ball. The ball came to my foot and I was running away, right? So I tried to just heel flick it over my head and I missed it, obviously, because I wasn't very great at soccer. That wasn't really the reason why I missed it, but I just remember your dad was on the sideline. Our head coach was on the sideline and they lost their minds, pissed off that I would do such a thing. Immediately, I mean, there was a couple other plays, but pretty much like first opportunity, I got pulled out of the game. We ended up losing like a 3-1 lead and lost in the final minutes. And then everything was over. Everybody was crying. It was a horrible way to end the season. But I look back on that, dude, as like a couple things. But anyways, my point with all this is that's like a big lesson for me of like, I don't think that I messed that play up because I couldn't do it, because I did that all the time in practice. I think I messed that play up because I'd never played in games and I wasn't used to playing in games. And that's a skill in and of itself. And so I'm not really going anywhere with this, but I think that the last game or the last impressions are some of the things that we take away as athletes from the sports that we play. For anybody listening, a lot of older people listen, they probably are well done with their sporting careers as well. But anybody who's still involved with sports, you and I can both attest to it's a lucky opportunity that you have to play sports and cherish it while you got it, because it won't be around forever. You'll be like me and you'll be old and play pickleball.
Pickleball is great. Yeah, but that's a great story. And I'm sentimental about things like that, especially when it's sports related, because how emotionally connected I am to that in a lot of ways. And that was my last high school game, obviously, being your last soccer game as well. And there's a lot of those moments that stick out, last training session in college, first training session in college, first practice with the high school team, first training session here, with the college environment, in a coaching role. Those things stick out, and I'm sure and hope that there's more of those to come in the future.
Yeah. What does a day-to-day look like for you with what you got going on in your role?
Yeah, so I'm very involved in the soccer aspect. I usually take classes once or twice a week, really depends on the schedule. Last summer was a heavy load for me, so that things were a little more flexible during the fall and spring semesters. In the fall, I actually kind of like to break it up in three different things, right? So we've got in-season, recruiting season, and the off-season. In-season, we're in here, it's 12-hour days sometimes. We'll get into the office at 8:30. We'll go through our recruiting needs that we need to get done, sending texts, making sure that we got visits lined. Then from there, it's soccer focused in the fall. We're breaking up clips. We're of ourselves as a team. Our film. We're breaking down film of the opposition that we're playing, reflecting on those, and then creating training sessions from there. Afterwards, we reflect on training. What went right? What went wrong? We play 2 to 3 times a week, Wednesdays and Saturdays typically. And then from there, once the season's over, that's about a 3-month period, we'll go into recruiting. So we're on the road every weekend, hitting things regionally, hitting things across the U.S., getting on flights, doing that sort of deal. And then in the off season, the guys are lifting 2 to 3 times a week with our head strength and conditioning trainer. And due to NCAA rules, we can only work with them a certain amount of time. We have limited days that we can work with them. And that starts usually in the spring break time in the semester, and we go right until exams are wrapping up in the spring. It's kind of a day-to-day for me. It depends: recruiting, soccer, class, just trying to balance it all.
How do you balance that all?
Yeah, well, it was overwhelming at first, just because, trying new environment, new people, and I just go with what's priority. There's a lot of things that we got to get done in the day, and one thing that you have to do as a college coach is recruit. You have to recruit every single day, and that's usually first on the priority list because those are the things that we can control. I don't try to get caught up in things that I can't control necessarily. So I just kind of make a list and go about it. If it's something that I can get done quickly and there's other things on the to-do list, that might drop down a little bit. But it always gets done in the end.
Yeah, I'm a to-do list guy myself. I just make a big list of stuff, and I'm somebody who I trained said to me recently, work hard, play hard. That's like his mindset towards it, and I'm the same. I don't think I have as much pressure in the sense of what I'm trying to accomplish long term with an organization as you do. And so for me, if I get that to-do list done by 1:00, I'm like, I'm done for today. I'm good. But that's a very, having the to-do list prioritizing is a common thing that I think, you and I are both familiar with, but I've talked to other people on this show about it. I have experience developing individuals, coaching individuals in an environment where it's about them and their progress. Something that I'm hoping that we get out of this conversation is you have a lot of experience in the organizational sense, right? You're dealing with a team of college students. I'm sure there's a lot of talent, a lot of ego, a lot of drama that you have to deal with. Stuff that from an outside perspective, it's probably very silly and you don't understand most of it, right? And you just came from an environment on the player side like that, right? The thing with me is I have the freedom, I feel like, to separate myself from the outcomes of those that I coach. I carry that weight a lot in terms of if somebody's not getting the result that they want from me and they came to me for that and they're paying me for that, I do feel horrible about that. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of things. I always say if somebody's seeing me 3 hours of the entire week in the gym, I have no control over the decisions that they make on the other hours of the day. That's something a lot of trainers say, right? And so at some level, I have this separation of like, it's still their responsibility to make these changes that they're looking for. You, in an organizational sense, have a very clear objective. And I would imagine that that's to win, right? Win games, win seasons. And it might even be a little bit more long-term than that, building an organization, like you say, recruiting, finding players and systems and things like that will work long-term. What is it like to coach in an environment where there's one clear objective for you and the athletes that you coach?
Yeah, great question. I mean, you hit on a few different things there that I'd like to kind of cover. And the first is, managing 30 to 35 guys on the roster is tough. Ultimately, in the college environment, we want them to enjoy that experience. We want them to be active on campus. We want them to prioritize academics. We want them to take advantage of internships, externships, opportunities. And soccer might fall on that list of priorities. One way that I like to go about it is developing team expectations and standards. So these are things that it doesn't matter if you're number one on the roster and the best player or the worst, and you haven't played a minute. Things that you can live by every day. Some of those, that we live by here are, right behind me. It's work ethic, selflessness, accountability, continuous improvement. Right. So these are things that I can continuously work on regardless of the minutes I'm getting. In that as well, having team goals. So it can be tough, depending on where you're at. Right now we're in a little bit of a rebuilding phase, as this program here. But having a clear mindset of what you want to do, right? We all want to win the national championship. We all want to go to the conference tournament, but can we be a little bit more realistic than that? Can we shed 2 to 3 less set pieces every day or every game? Sorry. Can we show up to training on time? Right. That's not necessarily an issue here, but other places that is. And then setting individual goals. And by that, I don't mean, oh, I want to be a good teammate. It's, you're the striker. You're expected to score 10 to 15 goals for us to be competitive and tick all those other boxes. I think, when you have a mix of all of those, incorporating individuals, incorporating what the team wants to do, incorporating those aspects, as well as the standards that you live by every day to meet those goals individually and as a team, you can get those results.
Something that you're kind of touching on is like this setting standards, having a value system. When you're young, and something I've been thinking about a lot is it's very hard to internalize what that means. I have a value system now. I try to uphold it as best I can. I understand at a very high level that the way that I feel is not always in line with my value system, and I need to sort of change my behaviors in accordance to that. Meaning, sometimes right now I want to stay up late, eat junk food, play video games, but I know I have a hard workout tomorrow, and I'm the type of person that wakes up for the hard workout tomorrow. So I'm going to choose to go to sleep right now. That's obviously a very simple, silly example of that, right? And something that I think about a lot from a coaching perspective is, especially a coach of young athletes. I think of you and I when we were growing up and your dad coached us. He had these types of conversations with us as a team all the time. And some of them landed. Sometimes I look back and I think I was a little bit too immature to hear some of it. And sometimes, I know you're laughing right now, it was like, what is this dude talking about? But looking back, it's always like he was on to something, right? He was trying to instill in us this, something he always said was, hey, I can't hit every single person on this team, but if you aren't getting playing time, you need to come ask me what I need to work on, and I'll tell you. And I knew what he was saying, and I knew what he was saying was honest. And I can't remember. I probably went to him once or twice the whole 10 years that he coached me to ask him for feedback in that regard. Now, feedback is something that I actively seek out all the time. And so this is all kind of leading me to this question of, what does that system look like for you with your athletes? I know you've given us this sort of like broad overview of what your values are, holding athletes to a standard, encouraging them to do things. But is there any sort of like day-to-day things that you do specifically that, sets the standard from day one in that realm of thinking?
Yeah. So on a simplistic, kind of answer to that, we have mandatory study hall. This is an academic place, and academics are important regardless of where you are, but some of those academic standards are a little different place to place at the college level. Here we mandate study hall that has to be done between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. 4 hours a week, very manageable. But sometimes what you find, and we've all been there before, is you stay up until 2 a.m. because you got a chemistry test the next day that you didn't prepare for. And now you're scrambling. It's last minute. You didn't prepare right. Now you're probably eating way too late. You're not getting the sleep. You're not going to be sharp for training. Okay. So can we instill some sort of structure without it being so to the point that they're just kind of going about their day and slowly understanding what it means to prioritize and have time management to that. An additional thing that we use, so we use a GPS tracking system, very professional or very common at the professional level. The little chip, sports bra type thing that you wear, tracks heart rate, sprint speeds, workloads, active time, those sorts of things. In that, we have 2 daily surveys. One's more of a physical survey. How are you feeling, right? So if you're super sore from training the day before, it's got a heat map. We can outline some things. The other side of that is a mental check-in. What do you have going on in class that day? What do you have in the next 2 weeks? Is there anything that you'd like to tell us that, you don't feel comfortable coming and knocking on our door to tell us? Those sorts of things. So we can kind of get into their mindset a little bit with why they might have an off day, why they might be a little hesitant to kind of take a leap or buy in to the message sometimes. I don't think we ask too much of them, but sometimes for people it is. This might be a whole new experience, and for their entire life, they might not have had to show up to training on time, and that can be overwhelming. So establishing little things that they tick off without they might not even think twice about it and how it impacts them long term. But getting into a routine and a structure, I think, helps on a day-to-day basis like
that. How much of this do you think is affecting? Actually, let me back up a second. Is this a common thing across the level that you're at, like tracking in the workouts of training, performance, things like that, as well as like these daily check-ins? Is this something that you guys are doing that others aren't, or is it sort of commonplace?
Every program's different. I would say your Division 1s, your Division 2s, some Division 3s, depending on funding, are in the position to do that. Your NAI schools, some lower D3s, maybe not. And it really depends on what the coach wants. It's tedious. Sometimes it does take away from us being able to watch film and us being able to break down practice. But if that saves, a conversation or two down the line, then it's definitely worth it in our eyes. So to answer your question, yes and no. Some programs have it, some don't, but I wouldn't say it's a common thing.
Okay. And, obviously this is very focused on day to day. I think anybody listening, and you and I both know, like, I have long-term goals. It's to win the national championship. It's to do X, right? How do I get that? I need to be at this level by this time, at this level by this time, at this level by this time. So how does that inform my decision-making today? That's pretty basic goal setting, right? What can I do today? What can I do right now to move the needle forward enough that I am going to at least get close to the mark that I've set for myself? You are in the location that you're at for 2 years. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm going into my second now.
Okay. And so I guess kind of my question here is, how much have you noticed an impact on some of these things long term? Are you thinking multi-year, like I'm trying to impact this organization so that it grows and develops for decades to come? Or are you sort of in the mindset of like, it's the here and now, the stuff that I'm doing today is going to affect the end of this season specifically?
Yeah. Good question. So when I initially came in, that was my mindset. Look, I'm just going to give it everything I got for these 2 years. I'm going to try to make the team as successful as they can be for 2 years. And it wasn't like, I'm never going to think about them again after that. But there was a little bit of that. And as the conversation started happening with the other coaches and the staff and the players, I realized what this place can provide in terms of being competitive on a soccer front. And in the recruiting, you naturally have that feeling of benefiting the program long term. Ultimately, you're never going to get, or you're not always going to get the 5-star recruit that you want. They're probably going to Division 1. We're a Division 3 school. And it's about the development of the guys here, because those are the ones who are here. It's great to go to a game at a top level club event and be like, oh, wow, look, that kid's amazing. That kid's amazing. It doesn't take much to recognize those kids. So seeing the kids that are 2 and 3 off the bench, or 6 and 7 on the roster, that can come and make an impact over the 4 years, not just immediately, I think has been very beneficial to my thinking of that. And I want this program to be the best. There is a history of winning here. 2013 is the last time they won the conference. 2015, they finished third. We're slowly getting back to those levels. And I think this place can do it. I think the players here can do it. Sometimes it's difficult, and we just got to get some of those results sometimes. But yeah, I'm definitely invested into the long-term project for myself, because I think that's very beneficial when I do take the next step, but also for the players here, for the program here, and for the school itself.
Is there, I didn't send you this question before. It just kind of popped up in my head. Is there a thing that you feel like you've implemented into this program already that maybe wasn't a part of it before you came? Like what you've brought to the team and organization? Because I think about what I do with coaching CrossFit and movement and fitness, right? And there are lots of things that I've had ideas about or thought would be a good idea to implement that I've put into place it's cool for me to see like these stems and plants grow from these little seeds that I've been able to plant. And obviously I was put into a system that was pretty well established, and I was very lucky to have leaders that allowed me to have that freedom to do so. But I'm curious if there's anything that you feel like that you've brought that wasn't there before.
Yeah. So off the field, not necessarily involved with that too much, but it's a very tight knit group. These guys are very close with each other. On the field, though, what I do feel like I've brought is more of a tough mentality. We ask all the time, what does it mean to be a tough player? That doesn't mean I play through pain. That means, that infamous quote, when life knocks you down, it's not about how hard you get hit. It's about how hard you get back, right? Or something along those lines.
Yeah, I know you're talking about. I misquote stuff all the time.
Yeah, it's something along those lines, right? So that is what I've tried to instill. Playing in the conference that I played in, playing in the team that I played in, the dynamic that I was in, that's all I knew, was not to be buddy with the other team, right? It sounds weird to say, but you don't like him. It doesn't matter how they feel. Afterwards, sure, shake their hand, what have you. And I think that translated first on the training field, in practices on a day-to-day basis. And then as the season went on, you start to see a little bit more of that, start to get a little bit more gritty, start to have a little bit more of a personality. What is the character of the team? What is the identity of the team? That's one thing that I've really tried to focus on since I've been here. And there's been progress. And I think now we're in a position where we're returning 9 starters from the previous year, which is the first time that's happened since 2015. And the messaging hasn't changed. So it's now about how they implement it in their side conversations off the field. Because I think they get it. They go into games with a much different personality now, which I do take credit for.
Cool. I think, you saying that reminded me of our senior season, dude, in high school. But there was like 13 seniors on the team. And do you remember having that like come to Jesus moment, like a third of the way through the season, where we were essentially locked in the locker room by ourselves and our coaches were just like, I'm not going to be in there. So you got, do with that what you want, have the conversation. You remember that?
I do. I don't even really remember what was said or why. I mean, it was definitely the result of a game or training wasn't.
It was the result of a couple games and
in a row.
What happened was there was just not a lot of the team that we were on was full of a bunch of knuckleheads. And it was very much in line with that of like the people that we play are not your friends. But in the same note, what that kind of instilled, I think I look back so fondly of that year because I felt like I was like boys with everybody on that team. And yeah, a lot of us were like in the same grade, but think about, all of the freshmen and sophomores on the team, like we were just all so close with each other. We just liked hanging out with each other. And I think that part of that also was the same mindset of like, it's us versus them. And in a team environment, that's a very cool thing. And that's a feeling that I miss. And I'm in a team and I work with people but it's not like that. And that's one of the things that it sounds like you like so much about sports and why you're still involved with it.
100%. And, we took a team trip to Costa Rica, and I think that amplified a little bit more. Being in an uncomfortable environment, we played 2 games down there. And the first game, we showed up with almost too much confidence, almost too much, swagger about us that, yeah, you know what, we're here to win. Like, yeah, this is going to be a great experience. We're going to have fun. The mountains are beautiful in the background, but we're here to win. And I think that was evident in the performance, and I'm super excited for that to translate this fall, especially with the incoming, freshmen and first year guys that we have joining the group.
Have you read the book, The Boys in the Boat?
I have not.
You're kind of a reader, right?
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay. You should add that to your list. It's about the 1936 Olympic rowing team. It was in Berlin, and it was like right before World War II. So like Hitler was gaining power. And so like, it's a very cool historical context where, it's U.S. patriotism in a time when like essentially crazy shit was happening in the world. And they went to the place where that crazy shit and horrible stuff was happening. And they sort of got to see it firsthand. But it essentially follows one main guy. I mean, it's about the whole team, but it follows one main guy named Joe Rance, who was on the team, and essentially his whole life and his upbringing and this challenge of growing up in this family where his father remarried and had a bunch of kids with another woman, and then this woman pretty much was just like, let's leave him here and we'll move somewhere else. And then he like grew up by himself in his late teens and sort of raised himself, right? But he ended up going to the University of Washington. Is that a place? I don't remember what university, whatever the big rowing school is, right? And he makes the rowing team, and it's very much in line with what we're talking about, where there's a lot that touches on this of like, it's 8 men in one boat, and it only works if you're all doing it together. And if one guy's ego is like, I'm going to like haul ass here and really get after it and show my physical prowess, you'll throw everybody else off. And rowing is the perfect example of it, because I mean, you literally see it. Like if you see people rowing perfectly, it's like beauty on the water, where they're just gliding and the oars enter and leave at the same time and the catches at the same time. And if it's not, it looks hideous. You got the guys flailing around the back, etc. Right. And so it kind of goes over this journey. You should definitely add it to your list. There's a lot of, I think from a coach's perspective and a team coach perspective, there's a lot that touches on camaraderie and team environment, and having each other's backs outside of the sport makes the sport a lot better.
What? Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting you say that. Things must be aligning, because I just created a graphic. We heard it from HR here at the school. I just created a graphic that is canoeing, and essentially what it's showing is the two people in the front, how hard they're paddling, the two in the middle giving an okay effort, they're facing forward at least, and then the two on the back aren't rowing, or they want to jump off the other end. You have to have everyone facing the same direction with the same principles, with the same mentality to be successful. And that's day to day to create the long-term success ultimately.
Yeah. I miss that, man. I think I've been giving it some thought, and I think getting into an organization like that at some point, whether on the strength and conditioning side, which is likely what it'll be because it's kind of what I'm developing my background in. But I don't know. I just think of Ted Lasso and those like coach moments where he's like, where they rip up the believe sign, and he's like, belief isn't up there on the wall. It's like in here, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
All those moments. I'm going to misquote it if I keep going like you did earlier. But there were so many times in that show where it made me feel so nostalgic of being talked to like that, where you're just inspired over this arbitrary goal of just winning a simple soccer game. But it just means so much to the players that are there, or insert any sport. And I think that is a very cool thing. And anybody who never played organized sports or team sports missed out on, because that's such a cool aspect of community and being a human being nowadays that I think it's a worthwhile pursuit.
Yeah, I mean, and as ridiculous as it sounds, with how popular professional sports teams are, how invested the fans get, right? In Ted Lasso, it shows that a lot. But that's kind of where a lot of my inspiration came as well. Just being such a big Man United supporter, that I was like, man, like how do all of these people get so emotionally invested into one result? And now I am one of those people, but now I also get to do it, which is what I love to do, and why I'm doing it.
Yeah. A lot of what we talked about, I don't know how much you know about Nick Saban. Alabama head football coach, legendary coach. Everybody who coaches talks about Nick Saban, at least in the United States. But he's got what he calls the process. Are you familiar with this? Were you familiar with this before I sent it to you?
I wasn't. Did a little bit of research on it and saw what he has said about it in press conferences and those sorts of things, but I haven't dived into it entirely.
Yeah, so I mean, it's super simple. We've talked about it already. It's being mindful. This is like the art of sports that I think people who've never played sports don't quite understand. Like when you and I think about sports, we think about it's very creative and artistic almost in a way, right? There's nothing knucklehead, meathead about it. And this is what the process is. When you are training, it's this step-by-step progression to achieve your ultimate goal. But what it really comes down to is being mindful every single day of all of the decisions that you're making that will eventually lead you to the long-term goal. So if I want to win a national championship, the food that I eat, the amount of sleep that I get, the play that I make in training, all of that adds up to the end of the season. And so it's even as small scale as like when you're getting too ahead of yourself and you're at training, you literally need to focus on this one rep and this one drill. If my job in this drill is to just like check the space and stand there, I need to do it as well as I can, because if everybody's on the same page and every single time I do it, I'm doing it as well as I can, it's going to improve and the margins are just going to keep getting better and better and better until we reach ultimate success, which is national championship. Um, I know you said you guys kind of already have a system like this. How do you go about, maybe it's inspiring, but how do you go about enforcing those things day to day with your athletes? Like as a young man or person in sports, it can be very hard to trust that. But where do you get that buy-in from?
Yeah, I mean, I think to be excellent or elite, you have to do special things, special focus, special intensity, special dedication. Um, I think talent can get you only so far, but on the day by day, to check those boxes of making sure that you're doing everything right um, is very hard to balance, but gets you where you want to be. In that, something that we have here that I also brought to it, and it's kind of interesting. It essentially what it is. It's a hard hat award, and what it is goes out week by week, and we pick the first player to wear it, and then from there, the player that has it for the week then passes it on. And what it is, it goes back to our expectations and our standards, our values of the team, but also the little things in training. When it is just a passing square, that all you have to do is check off the cone, receive with one touch, play with the other, and then it's done at 110% effort all of the time for those 6 days in training, for those 4 days in training, whatever it might be, that needs to be recognized. And I think having a tangible thing that they can hold on to, get posted on the Instagram for, I think has gone a very long way. We implemented it in the spring, and I wish I had it actually. It's downstairs. But you sign it, and we have different levels of it. We have gold, white, and maroon. And in that, if you win it multiple times, you sign it different times. I think having goals like that for actual things that you can achieve for that, because it might not be playing time all the time. You can do everything right and still not get on the field because you're just not good enough, right? That happens sometimes. That's the reality of college sports. But having those things that you can win, and if you keep winning those days, keep winning those training sessions, keep winning those individual moments, and if you are a freshman and you have that development time, you will be in the position that you want to be in, which is ultimately on the field, probably in a leadership role, impacting the team the way that we told you would when we were on the phone recruiting you. So that's how we look at it. That's how we tell the recruits what's going on. We find a lot of success with that. And I'm actually looking forward to see how it goes in the fall. Because there's some guys that'll be joining, some guys that were studying abroad, et cetera, right? So seeing them intertwined with that, I think will be very good.
What did you call it? The thing?
It's the Hard Hat Award.
Hard hat. Cool. So like, yep. I think just from an outside perspective, similarly to what we were talking about before, where it's like you want to create this sense of camaraderie, it's almost like, number one, you're commending effort over outcome, right? So focus in training, helping a guy up, but you're also putting it on the team to be mindful of these things as well. So, I mean, I might not even have the award, or if I do have the award and I have to give it out, I've got to be on the lookout for this stuff. And so that's going to make me frustrated when people aren't doing that thing. So it's sort of like, you get the buy-in, it sounds like, from having the guys almost do it for themselves.
Yeah. And one week we actually gave it out to 4 guys. We were torn. We didn't know. And it wasn't like, we wanted to take away from his bad performance for not giving it to him when he did just as much as the next guy who won it. So we gave it out to 4 guys. Like, look, like you guys did everything that we asked and then some. You were out to training early. You did as much as helping up pick the equipment, which sounds like such a tedious thing, but I'm sure you remember from your soccer days, it was time to pick up the equipment, right? But they're doing it without being asked. They're grabbing guys and going to the extra lift. They're helping our strength and conditioning trainer with certain things. They're maxing out their benches. They're continuously improving. So I do think, you hit the nail on the head with that.
Yeah, my senior year of high school, I worked hard. Like I can look back and I can say I worked hard. I was the loudest guy on the sideline. I remember running up and down the sideline with the plays when I was there. Right. I went to the gym a lot before school, early in the morning. This isn't like oh, look at me. This is actually like if I realized my senior year of high school what hard work looked like. I thought I was working hard since I was 8 years old, but I wasn't. And so little things like that, helping the training staff, picking up equipment. I did all that my senior year of high school. And had I been doing that my whole life, I probably would have ended up being maybe not talent wise, a better player, but a better person. I would have been more bought into the programs. I probably would have been less frustrated with it in general. I think I would have got a little bit more out of it. There's a lot of guys. I was this guy a little bit where I felt like I wasn't getting quite what I deserved, but looking back, I was the product of my actions. And I think maybe at your level, it's a little bit higher in terms of looking at it from a playing perspective, but that's just something that I think a lot of people could learn a lot from. Doing the little things really does pay off, no matter how much it sucks when you're in the moment.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting, and this happens at all levels. It tends to be the same guys that are doing that. And I think if you create a team of 25 to 30 of them, I think that is very powerful for what you can do on the field. You're not having to have those conversations like, look, man, you were late again. This is the 3rd time in 2 weeks. Like, and you play, like you're an active player. Like, I don't know what you're not understanding of what we need out of you. Like we can't play you now. And now the team suffers because of that. We run into that a few times, like any other program. I mean, that happened when I was a player, that happened when I was a coach, that happens at the club level, that happens in this environment where for you, it probably doesn't as much, right? I mean, if a client's late, you can't really do too much about it. I'm actually not too sure. So.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out the best way to word this question. We've talked a lot about like long-term success, being in the process, being a good individual is kind of bottom line of what it takes to be a good player, which makes the organization good, right? Long-term success is obviously winning and doing well, but I'm curious for you if there's a more specific goal in mind you have for the individual players. I would imagine knowing who you are as a person, it has more to do with building these young men. We're young men, but building these young men to be, whether it's on the soccer field or off the soccer field, productive human beings in society. Is that correct? Or is there anything maybe more specific in that you think about?
Off the field, and I guess I didn't realize this, but the opportunities that they have here at Earlham are special. This is a place, top 80 academic institution, has the internship opportunities. This facility that we're in, that you saw, was completely alumni funded. So this place not only put the alumni in the position to be financially capable of giving back, but they wanted to provide an even better experience than they had, which I think is super important for these young men that we're recruiting to understand, but also the guys that are here, being grateful for these opportunities. 3 natural grass fields, one that we strictly play games on, a turf with a track, an indoor facility with an indoor track. Not everyone has had these opportunities. So I think taking a step back and realizing that, and that's what I want to get out of them. There was a very inspirational talk that one of our guys had last year. I was just like, take it all in. Like, how often do people get to do this? It's like, we are so amped up for this game right now, but let's take a step back and really appreciate like why we're here, what we get to play on. I mean, most people don't even get to play on a natural grass field. It's all turf, and this rolls perfectly, right? So that is one thing. And then tying it a little bit back to the academic side of things. Sometimes what they're doing, being on paths to become doctors, being lawyers, being NBA players agents, for example, all successful alumni that have come through here. Soccer might not always be priority, and we have to understand that sometimes. And making sure that they're on that pathway, right? So if you want to go to dentist school, like we have a very good program for, you can't get a 2.5 GPA. So does that mean you train in the spring? You might miss some trainings, but you're going to go and you're going to meet with your professors. That's what's important to me. Off the field, on the field, I think helping break down individual goals for them. That's what one of the things we've been doing over the summer, getting on the phone. Look, last year you were a freshman, you played every game, you had 2 goals, 3 assists, for example. This is the expectation now. You put on 10 to 15 pounds of muscle in the off season because you did the program, you were here on time, but now this is what we need for you on the field to put the team in the most successful position. And I think resetting back to those daily when they check in for preseason, before our first scrimmage, before our first actual game, before conference starts, etc. I think is on a more personal, on the field kind of answer to that.
Something you said there, I think as coaches, we're required to be a bit selfless in specific cases. Sometimes you were mentioning, maybe a player wants to become a doctor or dentist and they need to prioritize that over some aspect of being on the field. This is a little bit different, but say somebody comes to me and they want to accomplish X with their fitness and maybe it's too expensive or maybe I'm not the guy for it. I refer people to others all the time. I actually think about one girl that she started with us and she took a big interest in Olympic weightlifting, which is like the thing that I train and I read about and study and I'm obsessed with now. The sport of weightlifting, the application from a strength and conditioning perspective of weightlifting. But there's this guy that lives in this town that works at JMU who's like he's a RP strength coach. He's their weightlifting coach. And I knew she wanted to pursue weightlifting and go far. And so I was like, hey, you should definitely reach out to him because I'm great at teaching CrossFitters who aren't very good at weightlifting, usually how to weightlift better. And I think at this point now, I do feel confident coaching people at a higher level, but at the time it was one of those, like, I'm not the best fit for this thing that you want to accomplish. So it's kind of sounds like those two things are very similar between whether it's organization or individual, but coaches in general kind of have to know what they're capable of and also know where the line is, and that as a coach, values and responsibilities, or rather my values and wants and desires aren't more important than whoever's coming to me for help.
Yeah, I mean, I always go back to control what you can control. And I learned a lot of this through recruiting. We're going to do everything in our power to get you here, but there's so many other factors that we can't control that's not going to make you end up here. Either you're a very good player and you have other offers that are better, Division I, Division II, etc. It's too expensive, those sorts of things. And I think hearing and seeing a recruiting class cycle go through, being a part of that for a full year has taught me a lot about what individual players need and what to kind of hone in on for the next recruiting class, but also the guys that are here, and what is important to them. We're on the phone with these kids all the time, asking them very targeted questions because we want them to be a good fit here.
Yeah. You and I both have this unique experience as young coaches. This is something that I've given a little bit of thought to lately. I don't feel like I'm a young coach anymore. Like, I don't even give thought to my age. I don't give thought to the people who I'm coaching's age. I just sort of tell them what they need based off of what I know. Right. And so let's kind of shift our focus to developing as a coach, because I think you and I sort of have a unique experience in that very recently. How to develop yourself as a coach, how to get better at it more quickly, what are certain things to focus on. I have sort of a framework that I've been working out recently on the development of a coach broadly, and I would be very curious to talk to you about this. Um, what advice would you have for coaches when it comes to their own growth, their own personal development for young people wanting to get into coaching?
Ask as many questions as possible. I felt I knew a lot about the game. I would say to the average person, I do. Been, I would say studying it since I was 5. I've been around it. That's all I did. That's what I breathed. That's what I lived. Right. But I was in the college environment as a player. I was having those conversations. I had 3 different head coaches during my 4 years in college. So I saw many different perspectives. But asking as many questions as possible is so crucial because ultimately we think we know everything, but we don't. Or, a philosophy that we like to live by here, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, right? The game of soccer can be played in so many ways, but what's the most successful? And that depends. So asking as many questions as possible. One thing that I'm kind of doing right now, and you might be familiar with it, but it's U.S. Soccer has coaching licenses that are not necessarily required to move up the ranks, but definitely help. So they've got grassroots levels that they're trying to get club coaches involved with. They've got D licensee, BA, et cetera, right? So I've started to work on those. And personal, professional development. I mean, there's a lot of times, I'll go home and I'll just flip on the film. I'll be like, all right, so this is how we watched it today, but how can I watch it a little bit differently to target something else so it's not as repetitive? Or the messaging is the same, but in a different way so that it clicks with some guys that it's not clicking with, because it might click with 4 or 5, but we need all 30 to be on the same page. And then there's, a few different websites and things that we can go on and hear other people talk, because ultimately we need it too. We have our own minds that are kind of going crazy about how we should play and what's most effective or where should he fit on the field. But when it's other coaches saying things and you can watch some other training sessions, I think it's huge. But for me, it is asking as many, many questions as possible.
Yeah, I think that's good advice, because it's asking questions in the sense of like, hey, I don't know about this one thing. Can you tell me? But something that I've found valuable is also asking questions about maybe current processes. You may not necessarily think that they're wrong, but like you don't understand why. And sometimes that you can facilitate change in that way, even as a new coach. And I don't necessarily have an example to pull from, but throw X person in a scenario where there's just something about a system that just doesn't really make a lot of sense to them. It seems kind of out of place or inefficient. And they say, hey, like, what about this? What's going on with this thing? And that might actually be a facilitator to making changes. And along with that, asking as many questions as you can, just doing it, right? That's a process of doing it, of being involved with coaching others, asking questions. That's going to have probably the most profound impact on the quality of your coaching, because you are getting resources from other people and you're getting feedback from other people, but being in the process of doing it and developing those 10,000 hours, like everybody says, which may or may not be true. I don't know, but I do know that the more time you spend doing something, the better you're going to be at it. And that scales infinitely. So the more time you can spend with focus and effort and attention, right, the better it's going to be. And so I do really like that a lot. Something that I would like to add as well, and I'll go over this with you now quickly, but I have this, just imagine it's like a triangle. This was presented to me at a coaching conference that I went to in some form, and then I took it and kind of put my own twist on it. It's mostly the guy who presented, his name's Matt Della Valle. He's a CrossFit coach, but he's kind of come up with this theoretical development of a coach. The bottom base of it, which I think is the most important, is values. And he always says, to be a great coach, bottom line, you got to be a great person. And I think that is a very interesting take. And it's a very true perspective in the sense that, like, you as an individual have to be solid. You have to want to help other people do well. You have to want good things, good outcomes. You want to be in a position where you can lead others. And so number one is you as the coach, solid person. The step above that is fundamentals. And so from your perspective for soccer, it's literally like knowing the game. What's a 4-4-2 do? What are the benefits and drawbacks of that, right? What is the literal job of the goalkeeper or the midfielders or the players on the flanks, et cetera, right? The tier above that is structure. And so how does all that stuff fit into one cohesive system? This is sort of the things that you're talking about with like the organization that you're a part of, the daily check-ins that you have with those guys, but you're part of a system, right? And all those fundamental pieces fit inside of that system, right? And then above that would be like expert level. There is a fifth tier, but I don't think it's as important. But expert level is like, you know, perfecting your Maradona turn, or like that might be a basic fundamental thing in your opinion, but anything that's sort of high level, that's not one of the fundamental aspects of the sport that just adds to it. It's each player's personal flair to the game, how one guy's relationship with another makes the team fit together. But I really like, it doesn't necessarily have to be that systematic process, but I really like when it comes to developing coaches, having them come up with frameworks in their head of how to get better. And so for you, it's asking questions. For me, it's having good values, getting a lot of repetition, things like that. But it kind of sounds like you and I are both on the same page of like, whatever you do it well, and also just make sure you know what you're doing. Pay attention to the things you're doing and do it intentionally.
Yes, without a doubt. This place is different than where I've been before, and the student athletes are very inquisitive. They always want to ask why. They want to dig a little deeper in terms of why we're doing this, which initially threw me off because I thought it was like, why are you questioning me? This is the drill. This is a drill that I really enjoy doing. This is a drill that I think is very beneficial for what we need in this moment. But they were asking me why, or trying to change the rules. It's just like, it had me dig a little deeper, to where now I've changed it based on what they said, but also keeping, those fundamentals, to make it better, make it more competitive, make it more productive. Because maybe they were right. And I think a lot of, coaches feel like they're up on a pedestal and, whatever I say goes, but ultimately we're not the ones doing it anymore. We might have at one point, but we're not anymore. Something I like to go back on in this realm is a style of play. A lot of coaches now want to keep the ball on the floor and move it through the thirds and create triangles, which, yes, is fine. You can have that, but you also have to have a backup plan. And for us, and where we're most successful, we have a 6'4" striker. We are going to play direct. We are going to pump it into the channels. We might not win the first one. We have to win the second one. And then from there, if we don't, we press. We all shift over. We press. We keep them that direction. And a lot of people don't like playing direct. But if we're not good enough to keep the ball and move it around the back four multiple times, why are we going to do it? We'll go short on goal kicks, for example, right? We'll go short in that direction. We'll suck them in, boom, over the top. And sometimes they don't like that. But you can also not play when you're also getting the minutes. So I think it kind of ties in a lot about the buy-in, but the questioning, because ultimately, like I said, we're not the ones on the field anymore. They are, and they might be seeing some things themselves. So I also think being vocal as a way to improve as a coach. Sometimes people might be hesitant. I know you and I are a little different in that aspect. We're going to say what we feel, how we feel, and be confident when we do it. But some people aren't. And if you are stepping in that position, be confident in what you do know and kind of run with it from there.
Yeah. So just to kind of like summarize that, it's almost like you not to ask questions is not only to like superiors, but it's also like if you get asked questions as a coach, really take a look at some of the reasons behind why you're doing what you're doing. It in general, if somebody says, "Hey, why are we doing this?" It's good to have an answer for them, or at least be okay with trying to work that out with them in some capacity or some aspect. That kind of touches on another question that I wanted to ask you of like, as a coach, there's not a playbook for you and I on how to do this. I mean, yeah, there's coaches that have shared their experiences and their systems and their beliefs and written books, but we're the people that people look to for answers. And so when you say we're doing this drill and people are, or your players perhaps are like, why are we going to do that? Right. It sounds like you respond very well to that. You actually do sort of take the feedback and run with it. But all that being said, have you ever given any thought about sort of what maybe developing a playbook for yourself looks like, or maybe another way to put that would be like, is there any specific process that you have for getting better as a coach, getting better as a leader?
Yes and no. I think I would, to answer that simplistically, I still think I'm trying to figure a lot of things out, especially at the college level. I I think being a college soccer coach does have a little bit more of a strict pathway and playbook, unfortunately, because sometimes you're not going to be qualified no matter what you do for that big Division 1 job, right? Um, but in terms of what you can control, um, I do think there is a few different ways of going about it. Um, like, not entirely sure where I'm going with this, but having the guidance from, in my position, a head coach, and having mentors that you can always go back on, in that sense, to keep improving. I mean, I do think it's interesting you mentioned, and of course I've thought about it like this, but maybe not that directly, in terms of players are coming to us for answers. And I think, having played at the college level, I can answer those questions. Now, if I were to jump into a Division 1 job and try to answer those questions, I think that would be a little tougher, and probably the area that I'm trying to improve myself. And I think that only comes with time. But as you start to see things develop, those first kind of few training sessions, I didn't know half these guys' names. I mean, I did, but I didn't recognize it with a face. So I'm trying to put that together, as well as try to identify how we play, because I'm still adjusting to that. But now that I've been here and I'm more comfortable, I can see that progression when you're out of place for a longer period of time, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's cool. Like, I think anytime you're new, it's okay to just like stand there and watch and like say, "Hey, what's up? My name's Darin. My name's Joel. Good to meet you. Um, thanks for letting me be here." Like, when you're a coach and you were the new guy, like, it's okay to just acknowledge that, put it all out there. Hey, I'm new here, but I'm excited to work with you guys. I'm excited to learn from you guys. I'm excited to hopefully teach you guys something, implement some things. So, something that part of my job is a bit of sales too. And I use the term sales, but if somebody comes in and is like, "Hey, I want to get in shape," that's sales, right? And so, to me, part of that process is literally just being honest. Like, "Hey, this is where you are right now. This is where you want to go. These are the steps that are going to take us to get there. This is how much it costs." And like, that's it. There's no like sliminess about it. Similarly to implementing yourself in an organization, it's okay that you're the new guy. That's part of the process, and it's okay to tell the guys that to their face. Like, I'm kind of talking my way to the point of, if you're a new coach, just vocalize to everybody that's around you what's happening. Like, "Hey, I'm excited to learn from you guys. I'm excited to have my experience, hopefully teach you guys something, and sort of go about this exchange of process over the next couple weeks, months, and years, or whatever." So, I definitely like that a lot. You mentioned mentors. Last couple questions here. I'm curious, is there any specific coaches or mentors that you look up to?
On a more personal level, that I've actually had connections with, obviously my dad's a big one, because he's the one that got me into the game. A lot of my values are from him and his coaching philosophy. I would say my college coach from my senior year, I still have a really good relationship with. He taught me a lot of his style of play and how he wants to play. I've taken a lot of that, how he built connections, and what we had to go through our senior year. I think really made us close. And then, on a more broad, kind of spectrum, in terms of like, Nick Saban's of the world, Sir Alex Ferguson, the longtime coach of Manchester United. I think his way of leading, I read his book, Leading. The way that he player managed. Yes, he was the coach, but he wasn't the one putting the cones down at training. He selected the lineup, and he also built so many good relationships. Obviously, it's accelerated at that level, because you're dealing with professionals that are on $200K a week and a bit of divas in some ways. So managing those relationships and trying to get the best out of them is interesting to me, and he's won everything. So you can't really argue with it. But yeah, that's kind of a personal and, more broad kind of answer to that.
What are you hoping to accomplish with your coaching? Like, what do you want to do with it?
I want to make it to the highest level that I can. And I think there's a lot of inspiration you can take from that. The current, I guess the interim head coach for the U.S. men's national team was a former Division III coach. There's a lot of things, and like you said, there really is no playbook for it. Was that luck? Was that by chance? How did he get into that? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's somewhere, but it's not a clear blueprint. One of the classes that I took over this summer was, career pathways in a master's in education. So exploring those different options as well. But yeah, ultimately make it as high as I can. And I think realistically, I do think I can make it to the Division I level. Now I might have to be the low man on the totem pole for a few years, but I think, with what I believe, I think I can get there.
Yeah, man, you can get there. You can do whatever you want. You could be at the highest level, man. You just gotta, and this is something that I'm learning with this podcast is like, theoretically, if I just keep doing it, it'll keep growing. And then like I could do it eventually at some level full time. And the choice is just, sometimes it sucks, dude. Sometimes I'm like, man, this is going to take forever. And I suck at this. And I'll listen back to it and I'll be like, I sounded like a moron when I said that, when I misquoted Rocky Balboa. Who is it? Who'd you try to quote? Rocky Balboa?
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever.
Yes.
But that's part of it, right? That's part of getting there,
Yeah.
Figuring out what works, what doesn't, things like that. So I think you're doing all good things, man. And, just keep at it. And, you got the mindset to do whatever you want to. But something we've been talking about a bit is, good coaches great people make great coaches. We've asked the question to everybody, what is a good person? I want to twist it up a little bit for you. What, in your opinion, makes a great coach?
Building relationships. Not everyone is the same. So understanding not necessarily what they've been through, but who they are, why they do the things that they do, why they interact with people the way they do. Why are they such a good soccer player? How did they become such a good soccer player? Why do you want to be a doctor? Building those kind of relationships, which I think you can do at the college level very well because you recruit them. So we're asking these kind of questions, not only what do you want to study, but what do you like to do in your free time? What's your family situation? And I think kind of understanding that, and everyone's got, something that they might not be proud of or what have you. So kind of uncovering that layer and digging deep into that, building those relationships, I think can set you apart as a great coach. Going back to that Nick Saban kind of the answer that I had to that, to be excellent or elite, you have to be special. And what makes a special person? Everyone has their own kind of answer to that. Very good. You got anything else you want to add? No, I think you're doing great things as well. You're killing it, checking all the boxes. You're doing the right things. I enjoy listening. You have some interesting guests on, which I appreciate, their perspective and what they're doing. So yeah, that's really all I have. I appreciate, coming on and talking.
Thanks, man. That does mean a lot. We got to FaceTime more, dude. We gotta talk more or something.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, but we'll stay in touch, man. I love you. Thank you for doing this. This was cool, very special for me. We'll definitely at some point do it again. But yeah, man, we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Let's do, man.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode of Good People. Before we head out, if you guys are watching this week's episode on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. And so you never miss an episode, turn on notifications. If you really enjoy this episode, please share it with somebody that you love, perhaps your grandma. We'll see you next time.